Does the new Smoker deck have enough pieces to keep up with the meta? Let's talk about it. What's up, captains? Welcome back to the other decks. My name is Casual Dobo, and today we're going to be going over the Smoker deck list that was used in last week's gameplay, where I played against my friend Alex's Smoker list using my own Zoro deck list. So I'm going to go over one part of that series. If you don't know what match I'm talking about, go ahead, check it out up in the corner here. It's a pretty good game, and probably one of the more, I would say, meta matchups that you can probably expect to see in upcoming tournaments like the Treasure Cup or even some of the offline regionals. Now, Smoker is interesting because I personally believe that he is one of the, if not the best black leader that came out of OP02, better than some of the hybrid leaders that we saw, and then definitely better than Sakazuki. So if you plan to play mono black, Smoker's probably your guy. And Smoker does have enough tools and effects in his toolbox in order to keep up with the rest of the meta, with Zoro decks, with your Kinemons, Ivankovs, Whitebeards. And so for this video, we're going to be breaking it down into some key features. The core of the deck, what I think are the most important elements of how this deck functions, the essentials, things that you'll probably need to help support that core, and then finally some flex spots. There are a couple flex spots here that you may or may not agree with, but ultimately that's kind of where the deck variation and the deck building comes in. So my recommendation is to, potentially use this list as a foundation and then practice and iterate and build off of it. And as we're going through this deck list and there happens to be, some cards that you might be missing and you want to pick them up, TCGplayer.com is a pretty good spot for that. And if you happen to use TCG Player to buy singles, just remember I do have an affiliate link with them, which is down below in the description. So if you're looking to buy, please maybe consider using the affiliate link. It's not a discount, but any purchases that you make through that link, this channel will get a portion of it. And that stuff goes towards, helping with tournament support for this channel and overall equipment upgrades. So by using the affiliate link, you'd be doing me and this channel a huge favor. So if you do, I really appreciate it. Thank you. But anyway, that is enough of the intro. Let's go ahead and jump into this deck profile. Alright, so starting us off, let's talk about the leader real quick. So Smoker is a mono black 5000 power leader, 5 life, and it has the effect Dawn ×1, activate main, once per turn. Give up to one of your opponent's characters -1 to their cost during this turn. Then, if there is a character with a cost of 0, this leader gains plus 1000 power during this turn. And so, in a sense, this really punishes players or opponents that put down cheap characters onto the board and then kind of just let them sit there. Good example of this is the 1-cost Chopper, or even starter Nami, who kind of just sits there and doesn't really do attack, but that effect is meant to, be there for the other cards, right? Smoker allows them to go to 0 cost, and then it'll actually proc his ability, giving him plus 1000 power. Therefore, with the plus Dawn, you're kind of consistently swinging for 7k into your opponent's leader. So not only is this good against Zoro, who likes to put down a bunch of cheap cards, but it also could be good for Whitebeard, just because the natural 6k power of Whitebeard makes the math a little fuzzy for a lot of things. And so this, as long as there's some cheap stuff on the board, this would allow him to swing into Whitebeard without too much concern. So now we talked about the leader, let's talk about the core of the deck, the cards that really kind of run the engine that is the Black Navy cards. So the first one I want to bring up is Kobe. So Kobe is a 3-cost to play, 4000 power, does have counter potential and plus 1k, but on play, you can trash a card from your hand, KO up to one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 3 or less. So Kobe is really good removal. Yes, you have to trash a card from hand, but honestly, it's probably worth it to get some of that advantage. Probably the most prevalent sort of meta experience you'll have with Kobe is when you're versing Kinemon, and especially if they're able to cheat out on Okiku on turn 1. Since Okiku is 3 cost, you're able to KO him using Kobe's ability when the turn passes over back to you. And Kobe's really solid because compared to the starter deck Kobe, which you can see in my starter deck review, this one actually targets things with cost 3 or less, so it has a much wider range of effect. Speaking of KOing things, we'll move on to our next core card, which is Monkey D. Garp from the set itself. So this is a 2 cost to play, 3000 power, Beautiful card because it has counter plus 2k, but its effect is even better. Dawn times 2, when attacking, KO up to one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 0. So you can use Smoker's ability to -1, say, a chopper on your opponent's field, and then use Garp's ability to KO it before it even gets to block. So Garp is really important removal for this deck specifically, just because some of the essential cards that we'll get into later really have a lot of cost minus abilities. And then next 4 cards are kind of pretty much going to be staples of all black decks, kind of at least for this set. And the first one I'm going to want to talk about is Super Rare Kuzan, 4 cost to play, 5,000 power, no counter, but on play you get to draw 1, which is very important for a lot of your removal effects because it often trashes 1. So gaining hand advantage is pretty good. And then also when attacking, you can reduce the cost of up to one of your opponent's characters by 4 during this turn. So this plus your Sakazuki, honestly, which we'll talk about in a bit, can make it so that you are able to KO something that has 9 cost initially, which is huge because that is so many different cards. Next core card is going to be Borsellino. So Borsellino is an incredible blocker that is very sticky on the board, very difficult to remove. 4 cost to play, 5,000 power, does have a counter, plus 1k, which is nice. A little difficult to see because it doesn't have that classic border on it. But the effect is, on your opponent's turn, this cannot be KO'd by effects, and it gains plus 1,000 power, and it has the keyword blocker. So on your opponent's turn, it's not able to be KO'd by effects, which is cool because that means that you know, your jet pistols, your other forms of removal, specifically KO removal, it does not affect it. And it's a 6k blocker. Now, a couple of different tricky things with this. One, it can still be bounced to hand, so against blue, it's less effective. Still, you know, good for, you know, baiting out a removal ability, but still, it can be bounced to your hand or the bottom of your deck. And note that it can't be KO'd by effects on your opponent's turn. So if you happen to be swinging into, you know, your opponent's life and they pull out a jet pistol, Borsellino can be removed that way because it is your turn, not your opponent's turn. But other than some pretty, you know, specific situations, this card is solid. Next up on the core is Sakazuki. So I was talking about him earlier, but 6 cost to play, 7,000 power, no counter, but honestly, doesn't really need it. On play, you can trash 1 card from your hand, KO up to one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 5 or less. So yeah, Sakazuki is going to be your main form of removal for a lot of the larger pieces that your opponent can play on their turn. And then the last core card I want to talk about is Kuzan. So Kuzan is the secret rare from OP02 Paramount War. 10 cost to play, a little steep, 10,000 power, pretty good power, no counter. But his effect is pretty awesome. On your turn, all of your opponent's characters get -5 to their cost, so that is automatic. And then on play, KO up to one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 0. So if your opponent had a 5 cost character on board, you can essentially play this for 10, everything gets -5, and then on play, you're able to KO that 5 cost character, because it is now officially at 0. And this has great synergy with Smoker because anything that's really like costs 5 or less on your opponent's field automatically get put to 0, which means that no matter what you do with your Smoker ability, as long as you activate it, it should proc to plus 1k. So yeah, those cards I would, you know, call the core of the Smoker deck, which is interesting because that's a pretty large core. There is a lot of cards that you feel like you need to kind of play with this, and this is even talking about the essentials, but that all shows that the Smoker deck list is a little bit tight. But with the core out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about the essentials. So the first set of essentials I want to talk about is the 2k counters, because you play a lot of it. Black is kind of a defensive color by nature, and so they are Tsuru, Sengoku, and Tashiki. So Tsuru is a 1 cost to play, 0 power, but counter plus 2k, and a lot of these 2k counters also have some good cost minus abilities. So this one, on play, give up to one of your opponent's characters -2 cost during this turn. For Sengoku, he's a 2 cost to play, 3,000 power, once again counter 2k, but Dawn times 1 when attacking, give up to one of your opponent's characters -2 cost during this turn. Honestly, I would actually save Sengoku in hand and not really use him, just because it's a Dawn times 1 when attacking ability. And then the last one, Tashigi, 3 cost to play, 4,000 power. Once again, counter plus 2k. But ability is activate main. You can rest this character, and then for this turn, -2 cost for up to one of your opponent's characters. So all very similar effects, but kind of different methodologies on how to achieve it. I would say the easiest would definitely be Tsuru, followed by Tashigi, and then followed by Sengoku. The next essential card I want to highlight is Meteor Volcano, and I would say that both the event cards here are very important for the deck. So Meteor Volcano, 2 cost to play, main ability is to KO up to one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 1 or less, but with all of the cost minus abilities that we have, plus our leader itself, it's pretty easy to achieve this. And also trigger, draw 2, trash 1 from your hand. Then finally, last essential card I want to talk about is Impact Wave. Impact Wave is your event counter, so 2 cost to play, counter, give up to one of your leaders or characters plus 4k power during this battle, then KO up to one of your opponent's active characters with a cost of 3 or less. So it's counter plus removal, which is pretty nice. It does have a trigger ability, KO up to one of your opponent's characters with a cost 4 or lower. And with the essential cards out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about the flex spot before we show off this whole entire deck list. Don Quixote Rocinante. So this is your 2 cost to play, 2,000 power blocker, does have counter plus 1k, and I wouldn't say that the fact that there's a blocker in here is the flex spot. It's really which blocker do you want in here. I've seen a lot of people go for Rocinante. However, you can also flex in the starter deck Tsuru, who is also a blocker. It's essentially the same card. Next one up is going to be Asuka. So Asuka is sort of like a mini Basil Hawkins, but for black. So 3 cost to play, 4,000 power, counter plus 1k, so pretty good stats. But the ability, Dawn times 1 once per turn. When this character battles and KOs your opponent's character, set this card as active. Now, as a quick note, if you saw in my gameplay video, I was under the assumption that Asuka like restanded regardless of whether something got KO'd, but as someone pointed out in the comments, and as I'm reading now, it does specify that the opponent's character has to be KO'd. So if you're able to counter it, it won't restand. And I like the idea of Asuka in this particular deck because I do think that it is some good additional aggro here, but for my own personal playstyle, I think I would have rather preferred to put in another blocker here, either another 2 cost blocker or Hina. Hina's a really fantastic blocker that I don't think I've seen a whole lot in a lot of deck lists, and I think maybe the reason is that 4 cost, 5 cost, 6 cost slot. They're kind of tight already as it is. I mean, if you look at the core cards that we talked about, those are all within those cost ranges. So adding another 5 cost character might be a little much, but as a blocker, Hina's like kind of incredible. The last flex card I want to talk about is Belmir. So Belmir is 1 cost to play, 1,000 power, counter plus 1k, but really good ability. So activate main. You may rest this character, give up to one of your opponent's characters -1 cost during this turn, then up to one of your leader or character cards gains plus 1k power during this turn. So it does everything that the Black Navy deck wants to do, right? It minuses cost, it gives power boost, and all for an activate main ability. It's pretty good. It's pretty impressive. I only call it a flex spot just because that is a little bit, redundant compared to a lot of the effects that we see in the core and the essentials. So if you choose not to use it, I don't think it's going to hurt too much. I do think, it just enables you to do a lot more if you're able to see her. And it's cool because she does have counter potential, so that kind of, allows it to be like, okay, I can see her having a place in my deck. But now that we've gone over the core, the essentials, and the flex cards, let's take a look at the list all together. So we have 1 leader, obviously, 4 copies of Tsuru, 4 copies of Belmir, Don Quixote Rocinante, 4 copies of it, 3 copies of Sengoku, 4 copies of Garp, 4 Asuka, 4 Kobe, 4 Tashigi, 3 Kuzan, 3 Borsellino, 3 Sakazuki, and then 3 of the secret rare Kuzan. And then for our events, 4 copies of Meteor Volcano, and then 3 copies of Impact Wave. And honestly, I think this is a very solid deck list. If it was me personally building it, I probably would have added a couple more copies of Borsellino. I am slightly more defensive than Alex is. I think Alex really likes sort of more aggro plays, you know, utilizing Smoker in a more aggressive way, attacking with Asuka. And even when we're talking a little bit afterwards, you know, he wanted to attack more with Borsellino if available. But for me, I like defense, so I would have added a couple more Borsellino. And then I think maybe one additional Kuzan, the super rare, just because I think that draw ability is pretty nice. But overall, I think that this is very solid and can go toe-to-toe with any of the decks in OP02. But that's my opinion. Now I'd like to know what yours is. Let me know in the comments below what you think about this deck list, what additions or subtractions would you do to it to make it your own. Really curious to hear your thoughts. And if you enjoyed the video, please consider giving it a like and subscribing to the channel as we cover more OP02 into One Piece TCG. And if you want to see this deck in action, be sure to check out this gameplay video over here where we showcase this versus my Zoro deck list. Thank you so much for watching, really appreciate it, and captains, remember, build what you like, play what you love, and I'll catch you in the next video.